Firebase friends, it's Prof G, and I hope you're ready to become ladies and lords of data loading, because we're going to learn to load the data that you stored in the cloud in the prior lesson. And even better, we're going to learn to use the ultra slick and super easy to use commands in the FirebaseFIrestoreSwift library. Let us commence the hack. So Swifters, we're going to get the data that we've saved to our spots collection to load in our list view. So make sure you're in the list view file, and getting the data from our spots collection to load in the SwiftUI list view is ultra easy. And we have the Twitter user and YouTuber known as Flo Writes Code to thank for this. Flo got a shout out from Google's Charlotte Lang at the Firebase Summit for leading the open source effort that made what I'm about to show you possible. Here's the YouTube and Twitter account for Flo, Charlotte's Twitter account, and you can find her Firebase Summit talk on YouTube. All things I'd encourage you to check out. These guys deserve lots of credit for helping us achieve great things in SwiftUI. So in order to take advantage of that Flow awesomeness, we'll import FirebaseFIrestoreSwift. Then we're going to use the new @Firebase query property wrapper. Now there's a lot more to this than I'll initially demonstrate. For example, by including optional query predicates, you can filter down or query the data that you return. But right now, we'll return everything. Follow Firebase Firestore query with a parenthesis. There's only one option here with a collection path, so select that. We don't need any of the optional parameters. Now our collection path is the string spots, all in lowercase, and to put this directly in a variable, we'll follow this with var spots, and in brackets, our spot struct with a capital S, since we want to get back an array of spots. Then, down below, we're going to replace our list. I'll create a new list above this with list and select an option with data and row content. Our data is just spots, the value we just created. Tab over, press return for trailing closure, and we'll call the value we pass in spot, singular, which is a good name since we're iterating on an array of spot structs that we call spots, plural. Then we'll add a navigation link inside the list so that we can load the detail of any spot that we click on. So enter navigation link, select the option with destination and label, and press return for the trailing closures. Now I can highlight and delete the old list. We don't need that anymore. And our destination is going to be spot detail view, passing in a spot, and the label should just be a text view passing in spot.name. And why don't we set this to font.title2. Now we don't see anything in our live preview, but let's build and run in the simulator. Hammer time! That warning is bogus, we can ignore it, but no errors. And great googly data download, will you look at that? Both restaurants we added in our prior lesson are there in our list, with really no need to write any special function to download or parse this data. Thank you, Flo. You are amazing. And on behalf of all Swifters, we thank you for sharing your brilliance with us. Now let us see what happens when we add a new restaurant. Click on the plus symbol. You can add whatever you want. I'm going to add Barcelona Wine Bar on Beacon Street, a fine place for a date if you're old enough to enjoy an adult beverage. Click on save, and now Barcelona is in our list. Excellent. What if we click on an entry? Well, we want to work on the UI for this because, as we mentioned, we don't want a restaurant to be edited after it's been added. That would allow someone to move the reviews from one spot onto another. Not a good idea. But we've got another problem here. If I click on Pino's and then click on the back button, for some reason I head to Barcelona Wine Bar again. Then I finally get logged out and head back to the Snacktacular login screen. That's not what I want either. And frankly, I'm not sure why this is occurring. This is the first iteration of this app, so I'll chalk it up to something I need to investigate. Not sure if I did something wrong with my programmatic navigation stack, but we can fix this simply by getting rid of our navigation stack on the login screen and instead heading to our list view using the full screen sheet. Everything's going to work fine after we make this change, so let's do it. And by the way, we see this can't find Firestore error in here, which is not really an error. I talked about this in the bonus video in the playlist. So let's head to the login view, and we're going to delete all the code that's associated with the navigation stack. So first, let's start out with deleting the path navigation path variable, and instead, I'm going to create a bool for presenting a sheet with @state private var present sheet equals true. And obviously, I had a brain freeze. I should not have said equals true. I should have said equals false. We'll see the error in a bit. We'll recognize it and correct it. But when we remove that path, Xcode highlights a bunch of errors that help us narrow in on what we need to change. I no longer want a navigation stack here. I want this to be a VStack. So I'm just going to highlight the navigation stack code up to, but not including the opening curly, and replace this with VStack. Then down here, I no longer need navigation bar title display mode or the navigation destination, since I'm no longer using a navigation stack. So I'm going to highlight this, make sure that you don't over or under select the closing curlies, and delete this. And in the onAppear modifier, we no longer update the path if the user is logged in. Instead, we will present sheet equals true. And we'll do the same thing in the register function, deleting the path.append and replacing this with present sheet equals true. And the same thing down in the login function. And now we need to add our sheet, and we'll do this with a full screen sheet. We'll add it just before the trailing curly that closes the dot on appear modifier. Make sure that you don't get the curlies wrong here. And to get our full screen cover sheet, we say dot full screen cover. Select the option with is presented and content. Is presented as a binding variable, so we need to preface this with $, then present sheet. Tab to content, press return for trailing closure format, and in the curlies, all we need to do is call our list view with open and close parens after it. That'll start the list view. We don't even need to pass anything in. And now we see my bonehead move in action on the right with the sheet showing up early. That's because I initialized the present sheet to true, so it's presenting a full screen view without the user being logged in, so we see nothing. But we know how to fix this. Just change the present sheet up top to equal false, not true. And if you caught this when I originally wrote it, super kudos to you. You're totally getting this stuff. And our live preview view now behaves as it should. But now that we're not getting to the list view using a navigation stack, remember we just deleted that in the login view, we need to add a navigation stack to our list view. So let's head over to the list view now, and we want to add a navigation stack around our list. But if we command click on list, the quick action menu doesn't have an embedded navigation view, but we'll cheat a little bit. We'll select something like embed in ZStack, and then just highlight and change ZStack to navigation stack. And we're golden. Now I also don't need to hide the back button here since this is the first view in the navigation stack and there is no back button here. So I'll highlight and delete navigation bar back button hidden and replace this with a dot navigation title passing in the string snack spots. And I'm going to initially set the navigation bar title display mode to large, just so that I can show you that there seems to be a jump instead of a smooth animation when we go from an inline screen back to a large screen. I've seen a few posts for this online. It seems like this is a persistent bug in SwiftUI. I'll demonstrate it just so that you know it when you see it, and we'll switch back to inline later. My indentations look off a little bit, so I'm going to Command A, Control I to fix things. And then let's head over to our spot detail view and we can make those UI changes that I'd mentioned so we can't edit a spot after it's been added. But first, why don't we build and run and make sure that the changes we just made are working? And just so we start right from the beginning, I'm going to click on the sign out button, head back to my login page, log in again. I see my list view. I can click on El Pelon and we see the spot detail view. Head back to the list view, and we solve that weird problem we had with the back button. Although I'm not sure if you noticed, but the transition from the inline display of the navigation title in the detail view to the large navigation title on the list view was not smoothly animated. That's what I was mentioning before. It should be. So I think that's the bug that we've heard people complaining about online. Watch this jump again. So I'll click on Barcelona Wine Bar, then watch when I click back. See how we jump from inline to large without a smooth animation here? That's not how that's supposed to work. Now, everything else works great. I'm going to add a new spot like Union Street in Newton Center, a very popular bar in town. And when I save that, again, no problem. If you click on a spot and click on the back button, aside from the janky animation, everything should be showing up just as expected. Once again, we see the warning on the side there too. That's bogus. There's nothing wrong with our code. So to get rid of that janky non-animation where the animation is supposed to be, let's click on the list view, find the navigation bar title display mode. It's currently set to dot large. Change that to dot inline. Then let's head over to our spot detail view, and we'll update the user interface so that if we're looking at a spot that's already been edited, the user can't enter data into the text fields. So under the group for the text view fields, I'm going to add a .disabled modifier. And between the parens, I'm going to use a ternary operator to disable or enable these fields. I'll say spot.id double equals nil question mark false colon true. That means if the spot ID is equal to nil, and that happens since if we're creating a new spot, we don't have a document name, that's the name that Firestore gives us, so we want to pass in false so we don't disable the fields. Otherwise, if we have an ID, so it's not nil, meaning we've saved the record already, we have that name for the document we saved, we want to pass in true. In that case, we disable the fields. And I'm going to use this ternary logic to set my line width too. So I'm going to highlight the whole ternary code I just wrote, copy it, and a field should have a line around it when it is available for editing, but should not have a border around it when it's disabled. So we'll remove the line whenever the field is disabled like this. I'm going to paste the ternary code over the 2 in line width, and then replace false with true and 2 with 0. So when the spot ID is nil, we're entering a new spot, then we have a line width of 2, otherwise we have a line width of 0, meaning no line. Now let's build and run. We're logged in automatically. The app remembers our user's login. We see our navigation title is now inline, so it's between the sign out and the plus button. It's no longer large. I'll click on Union Street, and oh, look at that. The text fields are disabled. They have a nice gray background, which comes with being disabled, and they are not outlined. So we give the visual cue to say these are display-only fields, not editable. And if you try to click on them, you can't, which is what we want. But let's head back to our list view, click on plus, and ho, our text fields are enabled. We offer the user a nice visual cue of a line border around each field. They're also not in gray. Nice! So in here, I'll enter a new spot, my place by the sea in Rockport, Massachusetts. In the summertime, this is a fabulous date spot. You can eat outside, then take in a show at the Shaolin Lu Center in Rockport. That is an engagement-worthy date. Trust me on this, I've been married for quite some time now. So let's save this. But if we click on my place by the sea, we see the second time we're in here, we see the spot, but we can't change its name or address, which is just what we want. So this is working great, Swifter. Now, one thing I'd like to point out is that if you did want to directly change the data in the database, all the code that we wrote in the save spot function in the prior lesson will work if you want to update data when you click on it. We've got an if condition in there that uses set data instead of add document that will update an existing record if you want to, and we're going to reuse that code in a future lesson. But now we can also head to the browser and check out the data console. If you wanted to, for example, delete Union Street, you could just click on the document entry, then on the right here with the data showing, click on the 3 vertical dots, and you get an option to delete this document, do that and confirm, and that spot is gone. And check this out. If you return to the simulator, you don't see Union Street in there either. We didn't have to pull to refresh. That change was pushed out automatically. Also, if you wanted to delete all the documents in a collection, you could click on the 3 vertical dots in the collection column in the center here. And since this is such a big deal, Google asks that you enter the name of the collection to double confirm that this is really what you want to do. I won't do this now, but know that it's an option available to you. And one more thing I'd like to show you is the real-time database features of CloudFirestore in action. It really seems like magic. So most of us are familiar with the standard iOS behavior of pull to refresh. Well, with Firestore, you don't even need to do that. If the data changes on the back end, it's immediately pushed out to all logged in users in real time. Their apps will update automatically. Let me show you. So here's my simulator running. But what I'm also showing here in this new window is a video from my iPhone. Now I'm going to log back into Snacktacular. So I've got my simulator up and running, and I'm also another user logging back into Snacktacular on my iPhone here. I see the data, the lists are identical in both of these users. Then I'm going to click on the plus button in my iPhone, and I'm going to enter, how about Shake Shack, which is at the street in Chestnut Hill, not too far a walk from the Boston College campus. So this iPhone with Shake Shack is being entered on my personal iPhone. The simulator is a different user, and the same thing I'm about to show you would happen across hundreds of thousands of iPhones if those users were logged in. I'm going to press on save. And gadzooks, my friend, Shake Shack was pushed out automatically to the simulator user as well without pulling down and refreshing. This was done as soon as the record was added by my iPhone. Just magical, and I didn't have to write a single line of code to make that happen. Feel the power of your googly Firestore skills, Swifter. That's full stack, baby. So I hope you're feeling good about those skills you're acquiring. Stay tuned because we've still got lots more big learning ahead while building out the rest of this app. Keep hacking!